you want.
Don't get her face.
Okay, welcome everyone to tonight's Parsha class. And tonight's Parsha class is obviously the Parsha Va'era, which is the second portion in the book of Shemot. And this is continuing from last week's Parsha. If you remember last week, God sent Moses on a mission, and the mission is to take the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. And Moshe told Hashem that he has a concern. They're not going to hear me. They're not going to believe me. They're not going to understand. And Hashem says, don't you worry. You go, and it's all going to work out fine. So the big question which we want to start tonight's class and discuss is what happens later in today's Parsha is again Moshe Rabbeinu, they're coming to God and is telling him that they are not going to hear. And why was it and how comes that he is still concerned about their hearing if God confirmed that it's all going to work out and it's all going to be fine? Specifically, if you come to the Parsha, I want you to turn to page 360, which is on verse 29. So what does the title say? Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe leimer. Hashem says to Moshe, Ani Hashem, I am God. Daber el Paroi melech Mitzrayim. Speak to Paroi, king of Mitzrayim, et kol asher ani doiver elecha. Tell him everything that I speak to you. Right? Everything. So Moshe comes to Hashem and he says, Hey, nani arav sfasayim. I have what? Sealed lips. Ve'eich yishma'el Paroi, and how will Paroi possibly listen to me? And you wonder, Moshe, again you're starting with the same mises, with the same story. Last week you said that you were worried about Hashem listening to you, about the people listening to you, and you wondered how it's going to work, and Hashem ensured that they're going to hear, and you're going to speak, and Aaron's going to speak for you, that's all going to be fine. Suddenly comes back this week's Parsha, and again he starts. Sorry, I can't talk. Especially if you see that last week when he spoke to the Bnei Israel, what was their response? They believed. It said clearly, Vayaminu, they believed. They believed. They heard what he had to say. They believed in him. Everything worked out fine. And then suddenly, weiter amaisa. Again, Eich Yishmael Paroi. My lips are sealed. What kind of lips sealed is he referring to? What I would like to introduce tonight, my dear friends, is a very important and critical concept into Moshe's life. And this is Melamed Schus, which means in English, Moshe was an advocate for the Jewish people. And we're going to see to many other incidents, many other stories in the Chumash, specifically in that verse, that Moshe is actually concerned with one thing and one and only thing. And this is, how is it going to play out in regard to Bnei Israel, in regard to the people? This insight, which I'm going to begin tonight's discussion, is an insight which is being shared in many different Hasidic sources, not in the so-called classic Chabad sources. Okay? Not in the classic Chabad sources. One of them is a Hasidic teacher, which I already shared with you previously, some of his insights, Rabbi of Vorka. He was a great Rebbe of a Hasidic dynasty in Poland. And he writes that what Moshe Rabbeinu is telling God is not the concern about Paro not hearing him. He gives a new twist into the words that Moshe is telling Hashem. He says as follows. If you remember, the last discussion that Moshe had with the Jewish people, they couldn't listen. They couldn't hear him. They were short of breath, they were overburdened, and they couldn't hear. Move on. They didn't want to hear about it. Not only that, they even complained. Moshe, that was the end of last week's Parsha. From when you started this old discussion about Exodus, and when we began talking about going out of Mitzrayim, what happened? It became harder. It became more difficult. Things became more challenging, right? So Moshe now has a problem. So the Rabbi of Vorka, that Moshe is telling God, this is my issue. Let's read the verse again in his translation. He says, which page was I?
360.
360. Vayomer Moshe lifnei Hashem. Moshe is telling to the Hashem, Ein ani aral shfosayim, right? I am with closed lips, and therefore my issue is Eich Ishmael Paroi. How is Paroi going to listen to me? If you go back to what's it called? To chapter 6, verse 12. Beginning of the Parsha. What does it say? Verse 10, 11, 12. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe leimer. Hashem, God spoke to Moses saying, Boy daber el Paroi melech Mitzrayim, v'yeshalach es bnei Yisrael mi'artzoi. Come and speak to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, that he should send the children of Israel from his land. Vaydaber Moshe lifnei Hashem leimor, so Moshe speaks before God saying, Hey, bnei Yisrael yishamu elai, if the children of Israel did not listen to me, v'heich yishmeini Paroi, then how will Paroi listen to me? V'ani aral shfosayim, I have sealed lips, says the worker. This is what Moshe is telling Hashem. Bnei Yisrael lo yishamu elai. They didn't listen to me, right? I came with orders and they didn't listen. V'heich, what does v'heich mean and how? He says, how am I going to feel? And what's going to happen if Ishmeini Paroi, if Paroi will listen to me? V'ani aral shfosayim, I'm going to become of sealed lips. What does he say? I have a problem, God. I don't want to go to Paroi. Why don't I want to go to Paroi? Because the people did not hear me. I am worried that Paroi is going to hear me. And this is going to become an acquisition against Bnei Yisrael. You don't listen to Moshe, and Paroi does listen to Moshe.
It doesn't say so.
You hear the twist over here. The issue is not about the Jewish people not hearing him or Paroi not hearing him. They did not hear him. It says the end of last week's Parsha, they didn't hear him. They couldn't hear him anymore, right? They believed originally, but then when things became worse, they couldn't even hear. Now you want me to go to Paroi. What's going to happen when I go to Paroi? Probably is going to hear. Why not? Sounds like an idea. You want to get him and let him out? God said let him go. Fine. But if Paro hears and they don't hear, then my lips are becoming sealed. I cannot advocate for them anymore. What am I going to say about it? Till now, I have an excuse. That they don't listen. Moshe is concerned with the one thing. What is Moshe's biggest concern? Moshe is called in the Zohar Raya Mehem. He's the faithful shepherd. What is he worried about? That's right. He's worried about his people. He's a Rebbe which is devoted to his community and to his people, and he wants to make sure that all good things are happening for them. This is his only thing on his mind, the people. So now what happens is that if there is a question on the people because they don't hear and Paro does hear, he can't advocate for them anymore. Vani aral sfatayim, I'm becoming sealed, my lips are becoming sealed. This is what the Farkash says. What did God tell Moshe? Don't worry. Paro is not going to listen to you either. I'm going to harden his heart. In other words, if you're worried about what's going to happen to Paro, don't worry. It shouldn't be worried. But here we learn about the greatness of Moshe. So this idea is actually the story of Moshe's life, and I would like to speak a little bit about it tonight. We all know, since this is not the first time we learn Chumash, we know there's going to be more stories about Moshe. One of the famous classic stories about Moshe is that what? That God was not happy with him. In the story of the water, he told them to speak to the rock, and the rock will emerge water. And what does Moshe do? He hits the rock. He hits the rock. So Hasidic masters say, how come that Moshe actually did it? Why didn't he listen to God? You're supposed to be the, what do you call it? Dugma chaya. You're supposed to be the living example of how a person behaves and how a person is following the orders of God to the word. So what is going through in Moshe's mind when he is being told to speak to the rock and he hits the rock? To the point that he's not entering Israel for that. It's considered a sin for him. The question becomes even more. We have a special prayer once a year, and this is happening on Shmini Atzeret. Right? Shmini Atzeret, the last day after Sukkot, here before Simchas Torah. We have a prayer that's called Tfilat Geshem, the prayer for rain. A beautiful prayer that the Chazan, the one who leads services, has a special introduction with certain prayers and piyutim and poetry which discusses rain. We have a similar prayer for dew. This is in Pesach, Tfilat Tal. When it comes to the request for rain, we go through, remember Abraham, and we say a whole thing about Abraham following God in the relationship to water. Remember Yitzchak, who was born after the good tidings at which he was said, let here be cruse of water. Then his mother, Yitzchak's mother, was the one who gave Eliezer the water. Remember Jacob, the story of crossing the Jordan River with water. We say all kinds of small stories what happened to our great people with water. And we ask, and we say by each one, Ba'avuroi al timna mayim. For his sake, do not hold back water. Baruch Hashem, in Seattle, the prayer was very accepted. Then when it comes to Moshe, it says as follows. Schor mashui betevat gome min hamayim. Remember Moses who was drawn out in a small basket from the water. Nomo do lishkamayim. he gave water to the daughters of Yitro. He gave a story of water. Zgulecho eis tzomu lamayim ala sela hoch va yetzu mayim. You cherished people thirsted for water. He struck the rock, and there streamed forward water. For the sake of this act of righteousness, favor us with an abundance of water. Betzidkoi chon chashrat mayim. You read it, you say, oh, hello. You're mixing up the story. You're asking God to grant us water for the sake of Moshe's righteous act that he was what? That he was hitting. There's even a Chabad song. The Rebbe used to always, lead that song in tremendous excitement. Allah sela och och, Allah sela och och och. On the rock he struck, on the rock he struck, on the rock he struck, vayetzu mayim, Allah sela och och. The Rebbe used to love the song. Sing it every year, Simchas Torah, clap with his hand. You think, hello, this is a story this is not one of the good stories of Moshe. So what are we saying? If we sing it, and we say Betzitkoi, and for the sake of this righteousness, you should favor us and with water. Makara. So there's different Hasidic insights about exactly what went through Moshe's mind when he struck the water. I don't remember if I shared with you. But one is related to what we are discussing tonight. And they say, Hasidic masters say as follows. Moshe Rabbeinu was concerned. If he is speaking to the rock, and the rock would have been listening to him, at that point, a big question happens about the Jewish people. I speak to you, and I speak to you. What did you respond? I'm not listening. The rock listens, and you don't listen. His lips will become sealed. He cannot advocate for us anymore. Because if you compare us to the rock is doing better than us. Without being taken out of Egypt, without being given on the Shama, without going through the experience of Sinai, everything is good, and look at them, they can't listen. So Moshe, which Moshe personifies as Mesirus Nefesh, self-sacrifice for whom? For the people. Goes and he says, God, you know what? I might not listen to you, but I'm going to protect the people. Huh?
Should be punished for it.
No.
Then it wouldn't be a story. Then it's not an act of self-sacrifice.
No, because if he did it for the love of Israel.
He sacrificed for his people.
He had to do what he had to do. He had to do what he had to do. When you are a Navi, when you are a prophet, I will come to it in a moment with another story. You have to do what you have to do. But at the same time, after the fact, and you have to consider Moshe's act, and you wonder, especially like I said, we are counting it as one of his many virtues, the privileges of Moshe. Take a look. He got the water going. By what? By heating it. There was actually one of the biggest stories that we read every year on Yom Kippur. It is exactly this story. That's one of the reasons we read it. What do we read on Yom Kippur in the afternoon by Mincha? Is a story of Yonah. Yonah fled, he escaped. He didn't want to bring the message.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want to bring the message to Nineveh. And there was a reason for it. What was the reason? He was scared they're going to listen. And if they're going to listen, the question is going to be, they listen, they don't. And that would challenge Moshe's relationship. We spoke many times that the old breaking of the luchos, the smashing of the tablets that Moshe broke on his way down to Mount Sinai, Rashi says in Chumash, was because to make sure that there is no complaints against us. You know what Rashi said? It's unbelievable Rashi. And I remember the Rebbe speaking about this Rashi in 1986 or 85 Simchas Torah. The night of Simchas Torah, and he was crying. I never saw the Rebbe crying like this. How great the love of Moshe Rabbeinu to the people was. What does Rashi say? Rashi says that Moshe Rabbeinu heard about the golden calf. Now you realize there's a problem. What's the problem? Because the Torah represents a binding document, like a ketubah, between the Bnei Yisrael and God. Now, when you have a ketubah and you have an affair, it's much more severe than someone who was never married or never committed and has an affair. Not committed, not married yet, not betrothed to you. Moshe Rabbeinu knew that this Torah represents the tie, the knot, the ketubah, so to speak, between Bnei Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if that's true, then if they're worshipping a golden calf, it's much more tragic than somebody who is not married. So what does he do? Takes the ketubah, rips it. I was never married to you. Prove that I was married. Okay, that's not, at least you're weakening the claim. Yeah, but Rashi said. That's why the end of Chumash, the last word of Chumash, Le'enei Kol Yisrael, Rashi says that God told Moshe, Yasher kochacha sheshabarta. I thank you, and I want to, like they say in Russian, Spasiba for breaking the luchas. Spasiba, thank you. What can I thank you? This is the last three words of the Chumash, right? The last three words of the Chumash in Rashi is Yasher kochacha sheshabarta. Hashem tells Moshe, thank you for breaking it. Meaning, God has an interest in the idea of having the luchas broken, so it softens the claim. It makes it much lighter. With this, another thing is explained also in this Parsha. This Parsha talks about the plagues. Talks about the plagues. Comes to the plagues, so we have the first plague, it's called Dam, blood. And Paro gets excited. He says, okay, I'm letting them go. Moshe prays to God, remove the plague, and then Paro gets hardened again, becomes stubborn again. What's the second plague?
Frogs.
It's not there. There are frogs, and what is Fardaim going? It's Fardaim are entering into power, into everything, even into the ovens, hot ovens. As you see on page 369, verse 28. V'shoratz hayoretz Fardaim, the Nile will swarm with frogs. Ve'olu ubo beveisecho ubechadam mishkofcho val mitosecho. And they will go up from the river and come into your house, into your bedroom, upon your bed, into the house of your servants and of your people. Ubetanurecho, in your ovens. A hot oven. And Hashem says, frogs, I want you everywhere. The frog doesn't have no questions. The frog goes into the ovens. Later, Paro says, okay, take it away. On verse 4, Paro calls Moshe and Aaron and says, come on, it's enough. I'm letting you go. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And what does Moshe do?
Stop the time.
No, he doesn't just ask them to leave. Take a look on verse 8. You see? It's all different kind of asking. Verse 8, next page, 371. Vayetze Moshe ve'Aaron min Paroi. Moshe and Aaron went out of Paroi, from Paro's presence. Vayitzak Moshe el Hashem. What does Vayitzak mean? What is litzok in Hebrew? Screaming, shouting. Right? Litzok. What is litzok? Tze'oko. It is shouting out to God regarding the frogs. What are you screaming? What happened? In none of the other plagues, you're going to find that word by Yitzhak. And he was shouting and screaming. You only find it here. What was he screaming about? There's a famous Gemara. The Talmud tells us, in Psachim, the Gemara says that Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, famous three prophets who were taken to Babylonia by Nebuchadnezzar, and they were asked to worship a certain statue. If not, they will be thrown into the furnace. This is recorded in the book of Daniel, right? So the Gemara says the Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah thought to themselves as follows: if the frogs, which are frogs, right? The frogs are not people. When they were told by God to go and to swarm by, spread all over Egypt, they went all the way to where? All the way to the hot ovens. If they did it, shouldn't we do it? If they did it, shouldn't we do it? And that gave them the courage, so to speak, to get into the what's it called? To get into the first. So the whole reason they went in was because of the frog. That's what the Gemara says. So the Hasidic masters say that this exactly happened when Moshe saw the frogs entering the ovens. That's why he screamed out to God. What was he screaming? He was bothered and frustrated. Oops, look at the frogs. Look how far they are ready to go. Jumping into ovens. Are the people going to do it? And he's very frustrated, so he's screaming out to God regarding the frogs. Like, how is this going to help me if it's going to become a challenge? Frogs did it and you didn't. Because of that call out, our Hasidic masters say, it actually helped that later Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah actually did walk into the furnace. So the challenge was taken up. But for Moshe, it was a moment that he had to by Yitzhak, he had to scream out. So this is the kind of stories that we read about Moshe Rabbeinu, what gives us an understanding who Moshe was. What does it have to do with us? It says in Pirkei Avos, a very famous Mishnah, and this is a very important Mishnah, two Mishnahs that I want to share with you, which is really not just important, but perhaps even, as we say in English, critically important. Okay? One Mishnah is in chapter 1, Mishnah 6, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia, which writes, Veheve don eskol ha'odom lekaf schus. You should judge every person favorably. What does it mean, judging every person favorably? First of all, every person. There's no ties here. There's no condition. Every person means every person. Whether you agree with him or you disagree with him. You should judge him favorably. What does it mean, judging him favorably? I see he's doing something wrong. I see he's doing something wrong. How can I judge him favorably? It will be lying to myself if I will determine it to be right when it's wrong. There is right and wrong. Not everything is gray. Right? Not everything is politically correct. True? So what does it mean? You should judge every person favorably. So then you say it's not perfect. It's not called favorably.
But if you look, there are some attributes in that person that are good.
But so then you're not judging him favorably. Then you're ignoring his negative attributes and you are emphasizing on his positive attributes.
Favorably.
The word is more. We don't see the picture always. A person can do something and it's really, really nothing to do with him. What do we nothing to do with them? Is in a certain situation, which that situation brings out of him a certain behavior, which if he would have not been in the situation, he probably would have acted differently. Maybe he's lacking the education, how to deal with such situations. Maybe he's lacking the awareness, or maybe he has a very heavy, fat Yetzirah, that if you would have had the same Yetzirah, you wouldn't know what to do with yourself. He at least controls it properly, partially. The Kafshut. Huh? Oh, so the Alter Rebbe says that the idea of Don Odol Kafshus is connected to another Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Al Todines Chavercho, do not judge your friend until you will get to his place. This is in chapter 2, Mishnah 4 in Pirkei Avot. Do not judge your fellow man until you have stood in his place. And the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, very, very graphic actually. Mm-hmm. He says, you know what it means? He says, there is a person that being in the place where he is, it says, a person being in the market, for him is the marketplace very overwhelming. And you have to look at yourself. If I would have found myself being positioned in the same market, how would I deal with what I see happening in the market? That's what the Alter Rebbe says. David means lim koimoy. The Alter Rebbe says lim koimoy mamish. Think, get into your shoes. Mm-hmm. Don't see him the way he's supposed to look in shul, or the way he looked at his wedding, or the way he looked in his beautiful picture. Look at him the way he's positioned for whatever reason in this or this location, and think about how would I handle and overcome the temptations which is being introduced to me on that very location. But this is not only that. It's not only that. It's much more than that. It's just, I'm talking about something else. This is Pirkei Avot. We learn it 6 months of the year. This is, everybody is following it, no question. I have no concern. I want to talk about Moshe Rabbeinu and his lesson. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he realized that he can't advocate about someone, he's ready to change and to do something which he never did. And I will share with you a story. Maybe I did, maybe kind of a little farbrengen, but it's okay. This is what the Rebbe spoke, and you can see it on video. I don't know if it has English subtitles. But the Rebbe spoke about it, and it was the only times that the Rebbe kind of gave out a little. A lot of times the Rebbe spoke about things, and we don't know why did he speak about this, and why did he speak about that. It could have been many reasons. We have the insights, we have the inspiration. Once in a while, very, very, very really, he gave us a little inside information. What happened there? So I'm talking about 1974, the 6th of Tishrei, followed by the Simchas Torah. 6th of Tishrei is the yortzeit of the Rebbe's mother. Her name was Rebbetzin Chana. Mm-hmm. She passed away in 1964, Shabbat afternoon, the 6th of Tishrei. She was actually taken to the hospital on Shabbos. The Rebbe was in the middle of the farbrengen. Someone came over and told that your mother is being rushed to the hospital. The Rebbe finished the farbrengen and he walked over to his mother's apartment and he walked up to the ambulance and he went with her together to the hospital on Shabbos where she passed away. Rebbe Tzulchana was one of those women. I don't know if I ever showed you, there is a diary that she wrote, and it's in English, by the way, also translated. If you want, I can give you the address. It's in Russian, and it's in Spanish. A diary which was only discovered a few years ago. And as much that we knew and we heard stories, the Rebbe himself said amazing stories about his mother. You read the diary, I remember reading it and I was like in awe, like, whoa. But being on the train from Dniepropetrovsk to Kazakhstan, back and forth, trying to help her husband. It's like crazy stories. She came from a rabbinic family in Nikolaev. But anyway, she passed away the 6th of Tishrei. From that time, every year, the 6th of Tishrei, on his mother's yahrzeit, the Rebbe used to farbring, obviously, but also do a siyum, a completion of a tractate of Talmud, which he did by his father's yahrzeit and he did by his mother's yahrzeit, always. That year, 1974, the Rebbe completed the Talmudic tractate of Sukkah. Sukkah. In the end of the Gemara in Sukkah, there is a discussion about neighbors. And the Gemara says that, it actually says in Pirkei Avos also, voice to a guy who has a bad neighbor, good is to the guy who has a good neighbor. And the Gemara brings an example. The example is that there was a certain area in the temple which they had, I'm avoiding the details, okay? So they had to lock up a certain locker, okay? Let's call it a locker, belonging to one of the priestly families. And because of that locker was locked up, the neighboring lockers were also locked up. What was the story that led to locking up that locker? Because there was a girl from a certain priestly family who dropped Judaism, and she married a Roman general. And she, when they came into the temple, the Romans, she walked over to the altar, kicked it with their sandals, calling him Lucus, Lucus. Lucus is a wolf, describing the altar as a wolf who is looking with a big appetite to take away the money belonging to the people by asking for korbanot to be offered. She kicked and disgraced the temple. And then the Chachamim said, if that's kind of child this family raised, they locked up their so-called location in the temple and so on. At that Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke, why is it important to speak about this girl? Especially the Torah is careful not to badmouth anybody. Why do we have to have the name and create such an embarrassment for our family? And you know what he said? And he went on and on. It's a long explanation that the Gemara is not looking to badmouth here. The Gemara is looking to elevate here. How? And the Gemara is trying to tell you that, look, when there is a girl who even when they married a Roman general, which are the people who are hitting in your family. When she saw the temple, she walked in, she felt frustration for the fact that her brothers and sisters are suffering. And that's why she kicked the altar, with frustration. Can't you see how much they suffer? Why don't you protect them? She asked. By kicking the altar. Yes. And you stand there, and the thousands of Hasidim are standing there. Whoa! There is being an advocate, but that looks like completely taking a direction completely out of the box. In other words, the Rebbe is now advocating in front of thousands of people at Izan Ukop, so it goes all over the world, and we have it till today, advocating for this woman, Miriam, the daughter of Bilga, for what she did. That she was actually expressing her frustration despite her spiritual condition. This is the greatness of a Jewish girl. Wow. Doesn't finish. Goes by 2 weeks. Simchas Torah. And comes the Simchas Torah, and the Rebbe goes back and continues elaborating on what he spoke at his mother's yahrzeit. And here he brings a story. But that story reveals what happened on the 6th of Tishrei. The Rebbe discusses a story that once they brought a guy to the Alter Rebbe who went a little cuckoo. He was speaking all kinds of weird things. They call it a dibuk, something got attached to him and made him engage in conversations which no one recognized him. So they brought him to the Alter Rebbe, the tzaddik, tried to heal him. You heard the story from me?
No.
Oh. So tried to heal him. This is the Rebbe saying the story. And the Alter Rebbe started discussing a story what happened in the temple. In the book of Chronicles, Divrei Yomim, there's a famous story about a prophet Zechariah who was getting up there to prophesy about the destruction of the temple. And his brothers, the Kohanim, got up there and they actually killed him in the temple, trying to stop him from rebuking and prophesying about the future destruction. And the Alter Rebbe goes on. This is what the Rebbe says the story. The Alter Rebbe says, how comes Kohanim will go and kill a prophet? In the temple? Can't be worse than that. But the Alter Rebbe said, they had an agenda. And their agenda was actually a positive agenda. How come? When God makes a decree, according to Jewish law, when he sends a prophet to introduce the decree, there is still a difference before he verbalizes the prophecy and after he verbalizes the prophecy. As long as the prophet does not say it with his mouth, there is still a chance to hold back. But once he says it, then it becomes very difficult to undo it. So the Alter Rebbe says that those people who were murdering Zechariah, they were so concerned about the temple, and they had so much love to the service of the temple. So that when they heard that here is a prophet about to announce that the destruction of the temple has arrived, they said, "Up! Shut up! You're not going to say a word!" And they killed him, just to make sure. And you think the Alter Rebbe says it wasn't easy for them to kill, because for them it was they are going to be punished for that. But their intention, their motive, was to save the destruction of the temple by preventing the prophet to make that statement. And as the Alter Rebbe finishes saying those words, the guy started like trembling, and he's looking around. The spirit left him. Meaning, he feels all right. He doesn't know what he's doing here. What basically means, in other words, the Alter Rebbe was healing this person by advocating about his behavior. That was a neshama, what was making his rounds since the story of the destruction of the temple by Gilgal and other ways. And Nebuch ended up in this young bacher. And now the neshama is going crazy, The guy is going Meshuggah. The Alter Rebbe finally brought some type of repair to this person, to the neshama, to the soul of the person who did this violent act against Zechariah, healed them, released, brought them back to peace by advocating. Then everybody realized what happened 2 weeks earlier. The Rebbe is sitting and advocating for this girl, Miriam Bas Bilga, and he speaks about that she really meant well, and she was actually upset with God, the way he behaves, why should you suffer, and so on. This is the story. This is the connection. This is Eichish Meini Paroi, Vani Aral Sosai. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu says. How am I I'm scared Paro is going to hear me. I can't have him here and they not. I'm going to become sealed. My lips are going to become sealed. I'm not going to be able to advocate. Because Moshe Rabbeinu finds every which reason to look and to search and to dig and to find something completely out of the box. but as we call it, adversary. Find a way. Find a way. We always speak stories about Rabbi Yitzchak Avarditcher. He was a master. He's called, that's why he's called, in Hasidic terminology, he's called the advocate of the Jewish people. Saneigram Shefal. That, one of the many stories, I love all the stories. Each one is unique. One, he was walking the week before Hashanah, and he sees a bunch of Jews sitting in the bar, 4 o'clock in the morning, drinking. 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah. Someone else would say, Uy, Elul, Slihat. Before Rosh Hashanah, you're sitting in the bar 4 in the morning. Paditchever says, Rabbi Shalom, look, you people, they know that next week they have to get up to Slichot, they make sure to train themselves, they get up early, they spend a week earlier in the bar, early morning, because they know that next week, the next 2 weeks they have to get up early for Slichot, they want to make sure that they have it in there. Live with Schut! And this is the story of Moshe Rabbeinu, which we learn in this week's Parsha. The story that we learn of Moshe Rabbeinu is that not his concern was that Paro is not going to hear me. His concern was that Paro is going to hear me, and then I have to deal with the fact that Bnei Yisrael don't hear me. The beginning of the Parsha, and this I'm going to conclude, starts with the pasuk. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, "Vayedaber Elokim el Moshe, vayomer Elov ani Hashem." So we all know that Elokim is harsh, judgment. Vayedaber is again an expression of harshness. Ani Hashem means what? Mercy. This is really the story. This is the whole story, this verse. Hashem sometimes speaks harsh. And we know that ultimately, if you wait till the end, you're going to see that it's not meant to stay harsh. It's not about judgment. Ani Hashem, this is mercy, this is compassion. And this itself becomes the story. The story of us, we see harsh situations. Our job is to introduce some mercy into that story. It's enough of prosecution and prosecutors who stand there and are ready to find everything guilty in our behavior. We are not lacking that area of prosecutors, people who are standing there and trying to find, they are like, what do they call it? I saw a good line yesterday. The letter writes to a parent, but the letter is in Hebrew, but somebody put a title on it in English. Who did I send it to? Who did I got it from? Just a second. Who did I got it from? No. Let's see a second. Maybe you heard the term. It's a good term, yeah. Let me see. The letter. Helicopter. It's like being a helicopter. You ever heard this expression, a helicopter? No? You didn't hear it? Oh. Helicopter parenting. Helicopter parents. You ever heard of this expression? No. You never heard it. If David Schneider didn't hear it, it doesn't exist for the last 500 years. Helicopter parenting. This is like, they call it, probably in new days they used to call it micromanaging. Okay.
Yeah,
today they call it a new title. Helicopter parenting. But the idea is the same, right?
The parent hovers over the child.
Right? Like a helicopter keeps on going to...
Nobody can approach.
The Rebbe writes to a parent, and the Rebbe says not only to parents, that's anybody who has a connection with other people. It's not proper, it's not making sense to follow them on every step of the way. Even if you are sure 100% that you are right, the Rebbe said, it is not fitting to follow your children and to teach them how to behave every detail of the way. And the Rebbe says not only to parents and children, anyone that you want to have influence on. So, on one end you can call it helicopter parenting, micromanaging parenting, whatever, you can take it in the pedagogic educational system. But talking in our discussion is, there are people we have enough helicopters who are standing on top of us, are trying to find, guilty, I chopped you. Oh, you didn't make a bracha, this sin, that sin. I have a guy, once we were sitting it happened in my house, not in shul, but from the chevra, from the shul guys. And before you cut the challah, you make a little cut. Right? Mm-hmm. According to Jewish law, you make a cut. What's the idea? The idea is that you shouldn't officially have a long waiting period between the bracha and the cutting. So it says, if you already started before the bracha, but you don't want to break it, then you're not going to make a bracha on a complete challah. So you make a little cut, and then you make the bracha, and then you finish the cut. Right? So that's what we always do. And I notice this guy is watching me. And he tells his friend, the rabbi did not cut where he made the cut. I moved it. Basically, the cut, instead of continuing the cut, the rabbi moved the knife a little further. And I heard it, I was so happy. And I said, Baruch Hashem, you tell God that this is the worst sin you saw by Rabbi Farkash. That he took the knife, and instead of holding it on the cut, he actually cut an inch away from the cut. If I'm holding there, when they're going to smack me for that, I know Baruch Hashem, it's almost done. Yeah, it's coming to a good end. The idea is not only that, Chavra. We have to really, in today's day and age, especially like Moshe Rabbeinu, it's a must in our community, in our families, in our friends, in our circles, everywhere you go. We can't afford talking bad about people. It's over. Can't afford it. Only find adversary. Either, if you can't, be quiet. Don't say nothing. But if you want to say something, no, I don't think, I'm not a big follower of being quiet. I mean, I would love to be quiet, but it's not a way of life. I got to talk and talk good and find good meaning and try to find the good in everything. And when you look in that direction, you're going to find the goodness and you're going to see that life is a lot of good to it. Laila Tov, everyone.